In this video, we will be talking about why it is so easy to fall into a negative thinking pattern, and we will also talk about some very powerful ways that you can use to immediately stop negative thinking in its tracks. Hi, I'm Divya Tampi. I'm a growth coach and I help people to perform at their peak levels by stopping procrastination. There's nothing unnatural or abnormal about thinking negatively. In fact, this whole idea that you should be thinking positively at all times is quite misleading. The reality is also that the human brain is wired for what is known as negativity bias. And that's also the reason why that once we move into the stage of thinking and focusing on all the things that are not working, sometimes it becomes very hard to get out of it. So let's look at what is negativity bias. Let's imagine that you are driving a car. So you are a good driver, and as you are driving the car, you have your friend sitting by your side, you're listening to some music, having a great conversation, and suddenly there is a truck which is on your right side which veers towards you. Before you can even think about it, your hand turns the steering wheel suddenly and your leg goes onto the brake. You do this without thinking about it. And that's because your subconscious mind is constantly scanning your environment for any possible threat. And your body reacts immediately to protect yourself from this threat. So you see, the brain has been wired for negativity bias to protect you. And it works to our favor in many situations. But there are also many situations which are actually not threatening to our well-being, in fact probably even needed for our well-being. For example, somebody giving us feedback, critical feedback about something that we need to improve on. However, the scanner which is looking out for threats picks that up as a threat and starts responding in a way which is meant to protect you, and that's how it goes into a negative thinking pattern. Now, what the negativity bias does is that even if there are multiple things which are going well in your life, your mind will help you to focus on the things which are not going well. For example, you started off your day really well, you slept well, you woke up feeling refreshed, you had a great breakfast, you had a little chat with your spouse and had a little laugh with your children, and then you got dressed, and as you're going to your work, there's really bad traffic, because of which you are delayed for your meeting by about 10 minutes. Now this is an important meeting and you start to feel really anxious, and by the time you reach the meeting, you've missed out some critical part of the meeting and now you start to feel upset, and there's a good possibility that you may keep your focus on the one thing that went wrong throughout the day, and if somebody was to ask you how your day went, you could respond to them by saying that it was a horrible day. So how do we prevent this negativity bias from harming us and keeping us in these negative thinking patterns? There are some very simple and effective ways that you can use to do that. The first one is what I refer to as the pause. But before I tell you about the technique, let me tell you a little story. Not very long ago, we had decided at home that we would change all the switchboards of the house. Now, this decision was made by my dad, and I wasn't really aware when he was going to get it done. So he had invited the electricians to start with the work, and they were supposed to start the work with my room where I do my work. Now, because I was not aware of this plan, I had planned my own work and I had decided on a lot of things that I wanted to get done during the day. And I was told in the morning that the electricians would be coming to my room and replacing the switchboards. Now, the thing is, replacing the switchboards is not such a simple, easy or short process. It's a time-consuming process where they have to break a portion of the wall, take out the entire switchboard and put the new one, cement it, etc. So it's a time-consuming thing. Not only that, because it was the switchboards, it meant that the electricity connection had to be disconnected for quite some time, which means there was no Wi-Fi to work with. Now, this really derailed all my plans and I found myself feeling very annoyed and upset. And that is when the pause came to my rescue. So let me first explain what the pause means. When we are feeling upset, when we are not happy with something that is happening, there are three things that happen. the first thing that happens is we experience a feeling. The feeling could be one of annoyance, irritation, anger, frustration, and many other things. Oftentimes, these feelings come together. It's not just one feeling at a time. As a result of these feelings, we immediately have thoughts. We have thoughts like, why does this happen to me? This is not fair. People never plan their time well. I have to suffer because of somebody else. I wish somebody would do their work well, etc., etc. As we have these thoughts, the feelings of annoyance or frustration or anger that we experience intensifies. As the feeling intensifies, the thoughts become faster and more complicated. And as a result, we react and respond in ways which are not beneficial to either us or to others around us. For example, in this particular situation, the moment I realized that I would not be able to work for most of the day, I noticed that I was starting to feel angry and upset. Now, the reason I was able to notice it in the first place is because this is something that I have been practicing for a while. For many of us, we may have to start with the process of even being able to notice that we are upset. Once you notice, immediately bring your attention to your breath. Remember that you are not your thoughts. Most of us get carried away with our thoughts, believing that all our thoughts are true. But when you pause and bring your attention to your breath, you're cutting off the train of thoughts. As a result of which, there is no more fodder for the emotions, and hence your emotions, instead of intensifying, start to reduce in their intensity. And as you continue to keep your attention on the breath, your breath becomes slower, deeper, as a result of which more amount of oxygen goes into your body as well as into your brain. This also helps to activate the logical or the executive part of the brain, which is called the prefrontal cortex. Normally, when you're feeling highly emotional, it is the emotional part of the brain or the amygdala that gets activated. And when the amygdala is highly activated, then the logical part of the brain does not have the data or the blood supply to do the thinking. Now that you pause, there is sufficient time for all the information from the amygdala to go to your prefrontal cortex, as a result of which your logical brain gets activated. Now remember that you may require more than a few minutes to allow all the emotions to settle down. So it's a little like, imagine that you are at the top of a hill and you fall off and you're rolling down the hill. And if there is a steep slope, the speed at which you roll down will keep increasing. But if there was a boulder or a stone along the way, your fall would be broken, and then if you were to fall again, the speed at which you would be falling would be lesser. It's almost like you're going down an escalator and you decide to step off the escalator. That's what the pause does. Now, in my case, what I did, the moment I noticed that I was starting to feel annoyed and angry, I immediately brought my attention to my breath. And I noticed my breath was hard and shallow, and I started breathing more deeply, and it slowed down. And immediately the intensity of my feelings also reduced. And when that happened, the intensity of my thoughts also were brought down. So pausing in the moment gives you an opportunity to distract yourself and reduce the intensity of your feelings and come back to whatever you were doing in a better state of mind. But this may not work for a situation which is highly triggering. Okay, so hence we have a second method that you may want to remember, and this is called reframing the situation with gratitude. Take any situation in your life. There's nothing called a single truth to any situation. There are always interpretations to the situations, which means that whatever we are thinking about a situation, in most cases, is a story that we are telling ourselves about what is happening. So in my case, when this work was going on and I was not aware of the plan, the story that I was telling myself was that I'm never told about plans that happen. I was not asked about this. This is so unfair. Why do I have to be the victim of the situation, etc. While in reality, or rather, in my dad's interpretation, he had been planning this for a few weeks and he had mentioned this during some conversations and I had not actually picked it up. So from his point of view, he had planned it, he had organized it, he was getting it all done. He was not even disturbing me or asking for my help to overlook or supervise the situation. So any situations that happens in your life can be interpreted in multiple ways. Okay, the way we can do this, there is one interpretation or one lens. It's almost like if you have a camera and you can, the angle from which you choose to take the photograph can change the photograph altogether, even if you're taking the photograph of the exact same thing. Like for example, if you are taking the photograph of a room, you could take the photograph of the room from outside the window, or you could lie down on the floor and take the photograph of the room which shows most of the ceiling, or you could be hanging on the ceiling and looking down and taking the photograph, or you could be taking a photograph of only one single thing in the room. And in fact, that's what happens oftentimes, that when we are upset, we are focused on the one thing which is not going right. What does reframing mean? Reframing means that after you pause, you bring your attention to the fact, you remind yourself that there are multiple lenses through which you could look at this situation. One of the lenses to do that is to look at it from the other person's point of view. But a very effective reframe that you could use is the reframe of gratitude, which means that you look at what are the few things that you can be grateful about for in this particular situation that you may be upset about in this moment. So in my case, all this work was going on and I was feeling upset about the fact that I was not able to do the work the way I had planned it. However, when I changed my perspective, when I use the reframe of gratitude, I reminded myself about all the things that I could be grateful for as far as the situation itself is concerned. So one of the things that I was grateful for was the fact that once this work would be done, then the house would look very different. Then we would not have constant trip-ups of the switchboards, issues with electrical connections, etc. The second thing I remembered was that I had people around me who could supervise this work while I could focus on the things that I wanted to. The third thing that I remembered was that this was not an emergency situation. The derailing of my plans was not because of some kind of a health emergency, which could have been the situation. And I also reminded myself of how we were getting this work done was a sign that all of us wanted to stay in a house which was well maintained and well taken care of. Not only that, I really started paying attention to, now that things were not going according to my plan, what different plan could I make so that I could make most of this current situation. So I realized that now that I did not have access to Wi-Fi, I could use this time to do quite a few other things which I had been pushing away because of lack of time. Maybe I could make some of those calls that I had been meaning to make. Maybe I could sit down and do some deep work in terms of writing content for the content that I need to create. Maybe I could sit down and make a plan of how I wanted to carry out my work for the next few months. Or I could even spend time with my family or spend some time in the garden tending to the plants, something that I had been wanting to do. Now, here's the thing about the second method of reframing the situation with gratitude. It can not only be used in situations where you're feeling intensely negative, but you can also use it in your day-to-day life so that slowly and steadily the story that you tell yourself is not about all the things that are going wrong in your life, but you consciously and deliberately bring your attention back to all the things that are going right in your life. So research shows that those people who practice gratitude on a daily basis, which means they take out the time to think and write about 5 to 10 things that they are grateful for on a daily basis, reduce their levels of anxiety. And in fact, people who have been diagnosed with anxiety and depression, their anxiety levels and depression levels are reduced drastically after they have practiced gratitude for a few weeks' time. So this is also a long-term strategy to prevent yourself from getting into a negative thinking pattern. The third method that you can use is physical activity. You see, emotion, the word emotion literally means energy in motion. If you think about it, the times when you have felt highly emotional, you would have felt a rush of energy running through your body. For example, when you're angry or when you're feeling deeply hurt, you feel this entire restlessness in your body, and there is a sense of throbbing that happens a lot of times. And that's because this energy which is rushing through your body up and down. And like I have said before multiple times, our body and minds are integrated. It's not like, we can say that emotion is something that happens only in the mind. It's something that happens in the mind as well as in the body. So one of the ways in which you can control this energy or redirect this energy that you're experiencing is to do some kind of physical activity. In fact, it is a known fact that some of the pranayamas of yoga can actually help you to redirect or channel that energy differently. So for example, it is recommended that you use Bhastrika, for those of you who know it. But it doesn't matter even if you do not know it. What you can do is, if you are starting to feel any intense emotions which are not very pleasant, you could actually stand up. You could go for a run if that is practically possible. But if not, you can actually stand up and do some spot jogging. You could do some jumping jacks. You could do some push-ups. You could do some HIIT, high intensity exercise. It's completely up to you. But any kind of physical activity, even going out into the greenery, so that physical exercise along with greenery can do wonders for the way you feel and changing your thoughts from negative ones to not so negative ones. The fourth method is my personal favorite. This is particularly useful for people who have a tendency to get into self-flagellating mode, wherein you have a lot of negative self-talk and you beat yourself up for things that you have not been able to do. This is a common habit in a lot of people. So let's say that you had planned to achieve something, but you were not able to do that. You had planned to complete something and you're not able to do that. Okay, and you are starting to feel very upset and disappointed. So what do? What you can do is take a timer. You could use your phone for that. Set the timer for 30 seconds. Okay, and speak out all the reasons why you are upset with yourself. So you may say something like, I had planned to do this, but I was not able to do this. I always do this. I never get things done. I never keep my word. Why do I do this? Why can't I do better? Etc. etc. Okay. So keep going. The thing is that after the first 10 seconds, you will kind of run out of things to say. Okay, just fill them up. Okay, fill up the 30 seconds anyway. So you may actually say things like, why doesn't the clock work? Why is the sky blue? Etc. etc. Go on like that. Once you're done, set the timer once again and start speaking aloud and appreciating yourself for all the things that you have done till now and all the things that you are getting done. For example, you may say things like, I love myself for how I behave to others. I love myself for my kindness. I'm creative, I'm thoughtful, I'm empathetic. Okay, so you could kind of do this. Again, you will run out of things to say and you could repeat yourself over and over. That's absolutely fine for those 30 seconds. In case you don't feel very comfortable talking out loud, you could also do this in writing. So this is called the 5-minute journaling, where you write down all your thoughts, write out all your thoughts. Start with the negative thoughts that come to your mind and then write down all the positive things that you can appreciate about the situation and about yourself. So this is not only if you are thinking negatively about yourself, but even for a situation where you're thinking negatively, you could start out by writing all the upsetting thoughts that you have and then follow it up by writing all the good things that can come out of the situation, all the things that you can be grateful for. So those are the 4 methods that you can use to get yourself out of a negative thinking pattern. The 4 methods are, the first one is take a pause. The second one, reframe the situation with gratitude. The third one is physical activity. And the fourth one is the 5-minute journal. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you found this useful. If you did, make sure that you like the video and do not forget to subscribe. This is Divya Tampi signing off, and I'll see you in the next video.